And your calling is somewhere, and not all of you, by the way, are called to make money. Some of you guys are called to do theology like me or whatever, but we all have a calling. So what is it? That's what we want to get at. So let's get to discerning. Let's do that. But first, real quick, I need to do one last thing, and that's this. I want to make a distinction between what's called primary and secondary calling. Primary calling is we're always called first to Christ. So we're called to be disciples, learn his way. But we all have a secondary calling, which is a secondary calling from Christ, right? So that's where ambassadorship comes in. It's Mary before Martha, right? It's sitting with the Lord before doing anything for the Lord. So we are first called to Christ, always learn of his ways. And then we do have a secondary, and that's where ambassadorship comes in. And I actually believe that someone like Steph Curry, he's to be an ambassador in the NBA. Several of you guys are meant to be ambassadors in Hollywood, or some of you should be a Netflix exec and influence culture in a powerful way. I'm going to talk quite a bit more about Hollywood because this is such an important area of culture. But always first, we are first called to Christ as disciples, learning his way, and then we're to represent him out in the world somewhere. So where is that? That's what I want to talk about, discerning our calling. First little story I want to share with you. So Paul says, look, you want to discern your calling? Don't think of yourselves too highly, right? I'll give you a real example of this. There's a gentleman here, his name is John Lennox. John Lennox, he's spoken here at Biola a couple of times. John is a friend. He's a professor at Oxford. He's a math genius. He has 3 doctorates, one in science, math, and theology, all earned doctorate. He taught himself 5 languages, including Russian. Man is brilliant, right? But he's also very warm. He's Irish, so he's like a Santa Claus, like fatherly, grandfatherly figure. He's just great gentleman. My buddy Max and I were in our last year of our PhD, and we were saying to ourselves, hey, what if we were to write a book together? What should we write on, right? And we were thinking through different topics, and we finally settled on one. We said, why don't we write on divine sovereignty and human free will, right? If God is fully in control, how are we free? I know Christian theologians and philosophers have been thinking about this for some 2,000, 3,000 years, but we'll figure it out and we'll write that book, right? We're just kind of encouraging each other. You write it philosophically, I'll do the theology component, we'll combine it, we'll write a book. We're like, yeah, that sounds good, right? So arrogant. So we're thinking about that. Next morning at church, John Lennox comes and speaks at our church. We're like, oh, John's here. So he's talking on the book of Daniel. I don't remember everything he said, but at one point he said this. He said, we in this city are doing a lot of big thinking. We're thinking a lot of big thoughts. Some of you guys doing astrophysics here in Oxford. Others of you guys doing nanotechnology. Others of you guys doing theology. And some of you need to keep doing that. Now, sometimes, and he was referring to the book of Daniel, sometimes we're called not to do those high-level thinking. It's somebody's job to do it, but it might not be yours. And then he goes, for example, some of you might be toying with the thought of divine sovereignty and human free will. I kid you not, right? And he says, you shouldn't be doing, as someone else you shouldn't be doing that though. And then he pointed right at me and Max. No, I'm just kidding, he didn't do that. That would have been nuts, right? But he did say that. So that kind of put me and Max on check a little bit. And we're like, hey, maybe we should reconsider this, right? Now, I actually praise God that I kind of heard that message in a very timely way, because if I pursued that particular academic interest, I probably would have run into one frustrating roadblock after another, trying to find a publisher or what have you. And I would have been outside my calling. And instead, I should have been writing my book on calling, which I've done, right? So God has something for you. So let's be careful to heed Paul's word where he says, hey, don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought. Now, here's the deal. Some of you have the opposite problem. Some of you actually have too low a view of yourself. And that is an opposite problem, but the outcome is still the same, which is you and I, we lack self-awareness, right? We don't need too high a view or too low a view. We need an accurate view of ourselves, because that's self-awareness. So my friend, I won't name her, I'll give her actual name, but she's a psychiatrist, long been working with adolescents in psychiatry. My wife's in psych and mental health field, so I very much affirm this field as a crucial place within the kingdom. We'll call her Jane. My friend Jane, I asked her, we're working, several of us, on a Saturday afternoon, and we're just working away, and we're taking a little break, and I was like, hey, Jane, I'm writing this talk on sexual ethics. It's for this youth group. Can I ask you, these statistics are just alarming. Can I ask you, what would you say is like 1 or 2 things you'd wish on every, 14-year-old in America, such that they wouldn't literally have to visit your office in 10 years' time, right? That was my question to her. I was basically saying, how do you put yourself out of a job, right? She's like, 1 or 2 things, and she thought about it for half a minute, And she was like, I'll give you two things. I'll spare you the second one for now, but the first thing she said is identity. If they get identity, if they get self-awareness, then other things won't be so attractive, like sex, drugs, rock and roll. Rock and roll's okay, I guess. Most of it, some of it, depends. But these things will not be attractive to them because they're so caught up with the call of God on their life, with their calling, that all these things just kind of fade away. If they get identity, if they get self-awareness, right? And I was like, that's really powerful. And so self-awareness, I think, is one of the keys to getting calling.